You're listening to the Twin Theory Podcast, Season 4. Hello, and welcome back to the next episode of the Twin Theory Podcast. The last time we spoke to you all, we talked about our Sweet 16 and just kind of reflected on those moments. I think it was a great conversation just to kind of walk back and go down memory lane and talk about that experience. It was surely memorable, and lots of people who were there and that got to participate even reached out and said, man, I was listening to that episode and I thought so much about, what happened there and how much fun it was, and just celebrating you guys' 16th birthday. So this episode, we want to change it up a little bit and kind of get back on some of the twin topics that we've talked about, just kind of, brushed over in the past a little bit. But the one we want to talk about today is intuition. So this is something that most people just think outright, you're identical twins. So you guys have like this twin intuition or this telepathic type, ability where you know what the other one is thinking, or you guys are just connected in a way that's not like everybody else. So we kind of want to talk about that a little bit today, and maybe just some of the experiences and in ways that we think that I really think just us being twins, may have something to do with it. Now, I don't have a medical, degree in this or anything, so I can't really say for certain, but definitely there are some moments and things that have happened that, I look back on and go, we were really in tune then. So I want to kick off, and I think I told the story. I'm not sure if I did or not, but I'll kick off with the story. And it's an unforgettable moment when we were in high school. I'll never forget it. The bus got to school early, and when the bus would get there early, everybody had to sit in the gym. We were sitting in the gym one time. Marrisa had to go use the restroom. She walked out of the gym, and somebody just came up and teased, as they always do. Oh, you're a twin. Do you know where she at? All the time. And I said, yes, because we've said no so many years. And so to so many people, no, I don't know where she at. I can't feel when she feel, all of that. So this time I played around and I said, yeah, I know exactly where she's at. And they said, oh, really? So where is she at? And I was like, she's about to walk through that door right there. Now, most of you all that have ever been to like a high school gymnasium, that a high school gym has quite a few doors and quite a few areas. And there's many doors that she could have walked through. But I pointed to the door, and I'm telling you, in under 5 seconds, I feel like as soon as I said she's about to walk through that door, it was maybe one beat, and then the door opened. And everybody looked over towards the door, and she walked through the door, and everybody just went mayhem. I'm telling the story from my point of view. I'm going to have Marrisa follow up from her point of view. But everybody just went mayhem. I mean, they're running across the gym. They're jumping up and down. They falling all over themselves. Me, I'm very calm, cool, and collected. But internally, I was thinking to myself, I ain't have not a clue that she was about to walk through the door at that moment. But what's interesting is that moments like that have happened, I feel like, a lot throughout our lives, Marrisa, where maybe I think something and you confirm it. Things like that has happened in our lives a lot, Marrisa. And you have definitely confirmed it, and confirmed that we're on the same wavelength in a lot of ways. And sometimes, I've just gotten used to it. It used to kind of be a little bit unsettling, because it was okay, are you how did we think of the exact same thing? We do have those moments where we say the exact same thing, finish a sentence or whatever. And I'll get more into it. Definitely some things our brother has mentioned before and that sort of thing. But I'm going to get to you. Getting back to the story, Marrisa, from your perspective, you're coming back into the gym and you see people going crazy. What was your perspective from that initial story?
So I would say coming in, of course, I didn't have any idea what in the world are y'all doing? You used to goof around all the time with the ladies basketball team. So I didn't know. Just whatever. It's Courtney. So, I didn't think it was that big. when you explained it, it wasn't anything weird to me. Cause again, we've had moments in life like that, and we had where it was just kind of like the guess actually came true. So I don't think I thought much of it then. I guess thinking now, not particularly about just that situation, but others. I think it's happened enough incidentally where there could be some sort of unspoken connection. But at the same time, I think as well, we've been around each other long enough and know and can read each other well enough and know each other's patterns and movements well enough to where we could probably guess that. Like, you might not see me for a week, but you could probably narrow down where I'm at and when I'm probably going to be walking through the door at my house and all of that. So I would say just kind of knowing each other within that way, we could make an educated enough guess, hot off the press there to where we might actually be right. So
yeah, definitely. That's a good point that, we've been around each other so much. And so we know each other's mannerisms and that sort of thing. I do think there's a little more to it. In that instance, I, was just guessing. I really was just guessing. I was just saying the first thing that came to mind. She's going to walk through that door, and then you walk through the door. But there have actually been moments where I do feel like we were just really connected. Whether it was I just looked at you and we knew exactly what was happening. And I say that because there are other siblings out there that are very close proximity in age and grew up together, and, they know each other, but having those internal connection moments, it's just happened, I feel like, so many times. And it's interesting because if my brother was here, he would tell you absolutely that there's some sort of twin telepathic connection, intuition. Somebody research it. Like, he would tell you, because he's told me many times, and I know he's told Marrisa many times, hey, you just called me and told me the exact same thing Marrisa called and told me. Did you talk to her? And I'm like, oh, no, I didn't talk to her at all. And he's like, okay. And he's like, you guys do that so much that he honestly believes there's something connected there. Like, he could probably write a whole twin conspiracy theory book and movie at this point. But he honestly thinks that we have some sort of telepathic powers. And it's but it's just interesting how, when it happens, maybe outside of those moments that we're like sitting right beside each other and we just kind of look at each other like, you think what I'm thinking? But like, if there's a moment where maybe I'm home and, I call VJ and say something, and maybe you do too, and you say something, I honestly didn't feel connected to you in that moment. It's just a thought, but it's almost like we think the same thing sometimes. Like, it's really weird because our personalities are so different, but like we're still kind of tied together in ways, and definitely in our thinking. Because, brother is 9 years younger than us, but we did grow up together with him, but we are not on the same wavelength with him. We are definitely not on the same thinking wavelength with him at all. So I definitely think that there's something extra there. And I don't think there's anything that you've ever said or done that bewildered me, that I was like, no, where did that come from? And I can't make any sense of that. Nothing you have ever done has made me feel like that. Everything has always been like, yep, that's exactly what I thought would happen. That makes absolutely all the sense in the world. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
So I would say I agree. I don't think you've ever come to me with anything just like wild and crazy. I think if you ever did, I would be less, I would be curious as to like what you were surrounding yourself with, like the people or the environment, to make you kind of float off in that direction. But even when we don't see eye to eye, like, I don't think you've ever said or done anything where I've just been like, I don't know where in the world you are. Like, I don't know where in the world you're coming from. So I would have to agree. Like, I think we always understand each other. Might not always agree, but we always at least understand each other pretty well. And that we do have those moments. I think, and this is slightly different, but to that same degree in terms of thinking and that and whatnot along the same lines. What was it? A month or 2 months ago, I went to the Corinne Bailey Rae concert out here, and I took a picture of the stage and sent it like, oh yeah, I'm here. And then you hit me right back like, oh my goodness, when I went to that same arena to go see Killer Mike, I sat in that same seat in that same section. And it's like, who would have thought? You know what I mean? Like I wasn't at the Killer Mike show with you, but I went to the Corinne Bailey Ray show, by myself and end up sitting in the same seat in the same section that you did. So I even think like seat selection, or even just the way we perceive things or do certain things might be within a similar wave. Like, again, we don't always agree on everything, and we don't do everything, one for one, tick for tack, for sure. But there is kind of, I would say, a line that does kind of hold us close together. So I can't quite put my finger on it. I would say that it's there. I don't know if I would call it anything telepathic or anything like that, but there is something I think that we both got, some mojo we both got wired in both of us that is very similar.
Yeah, I love that. The mojo that's within both of us. And yeah, when you mentioned that about the concert, like when you sent the ticket, is I think those types of things have happened so many times that it didn't really, I was just like, wow, I was sitting there too, but it just happened so often that you just kind of get used to it. But even that happens sometimes with like, if we're driving, like if you're like, oh, I'm gonna go to the store, and I'm like, oh, well, I'm, headed to the store as well, or we're going to the same place, and they could be the biggest parking lot in creation, and somehow I'll park right beside you or right across from you or something. And it's like, how did, it's thousands of cars in this parking lot. This parking lot is massive. How did we wind up right beside each other? Like it's so, and it's so interesting. And it's not me consciously thinking or like really, using a lot of energy to think, now, where would Marrisa park? Like, no, it's literally just me doing my everyday, and I'm just going to go and park right here and wait, that's her car right there. And it's weird. In some ways it is weird. I've just brushed it off over the years, I feel like. But I do feel like if there were like some sort of test that we ran, I do feel like that we could score almost 100 out of 100. Maybe if you went through some sort of, if they had some questions that they asked you, especially if they're multiple choice, and then they asked me the same questions for me to guess which ones you answered, I do feel like we could score very closely. And it's not even we're using a really strong conscious effort to try to figure out, now, what would she do or what would she say? No, it's just every day. Before I throw it back out to you, another person that would come up and write a few chapters of that conspiracy theory book that my brother would spearhead is my father. My father definitely thinks for our entire life, and I laugh because I don't know what happened as a kid, but something happened, and my father has never been convinced any other way, because our entire lives he just looks at us a little bit differently, and he's like, oh, I know what she's thinking, or or like, oh, where she at right now, like he'll be on the phone with me and be like, I haven't heard from your sister, where's she at? And I'm like, I haven't heard from her either. I don't know where she at. Yeah, you do. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know where she at. And it's funny, but I do feel like maybe that's a question that we should ask Dad, because I feel like something has happened, maybe as a kid, or we did something that, just spooked him or whatnot. But again, I think that he would, volunteer a few chapters of that conspiracy theory book to VJ, just because he has never said anything outside of y'all can read each other's mind. We've played what's the game, Taboo, and he won't let us play on the same team. Whenever we play Taboo, Marrisa, you don't even have to say anything. Like you don't really, sometimes I've guessed a word before Marrisa even said anything, or before she even, and I think that's when we got kicked off the same team. And it's so weird. It's hard to explain, but like you just made a facial expression, and I was like, oh, Bentley. And it was like, yes, it's a Bentley. And my dad is like, nah, they can't be on the same team. And it's like, it's not telepathic. I'm not in your brain. It's just, I can read your mannerisms, and I can read so many things. It's like I think at that moment, were just thinking about what you were going to do. And I was like, oh, she's trying to act a Bentley. Like I knew it was a car or something. I don't know. The word probably wasn't Bentley, but it was just whatever the words were. It was just when I was up there, you could guess them so easily. I didn't have to give that many examples. If we play charades, same thing. I barely get into any position and you call out whatever the word is. And for my father, that spooks him. I think he thinks it's kind of cool too. But like, it's hard to explain in those moments. It's just like, I can read you extremely well.
So I would definitely say, before I get to VJ and Dad, I would definitely say in terms of being able to read each other and kind of having that connection, I think in some ways, the ways that we are similar, that's where it works. Because when we are, say, playing a game or having to guess, when you are, when you're up there, you got to act out of whatever. In some cases, it's like, oh, that's the same thing I would have done if I was up there for whatever term for Bentley. That's what I would, you know what I mean? And so that's when it's like, oh, such and such, because I can read you well enough to where, it's like, well, I probably would have guessed the same thing or said the same thing. So in the ways that we are similar, I think it works in that way. But I mean, I guess if you kind of think about it, we did cook together in the same womb for how many ever months, so, and everything about us was built, our brain and everything. So it probably makes sense that there's some sort of connectivity somewhere. Now, again, does it go as far out as us consciously being able to understand each other, like what the other is thinking or going to? No, absolutely not. Which makes it comical when Dad brings it up every time. Sometimes Dad looks up at us like we're foreign, and it's hilarious. I'm just like, Dad, go sit down. But he is very convinced. Like, nobody could convince him otherwise. So maybe it was something when we're younger. But, even when you're younger, all the things that you do before you learn how to speak is nonverbal. And with us being by and with each other all the time, we learn to communicate with each other first. So I think even as we grew up, even though we weren't consciously like learning how to communicate non-verbally, it was still something that occurred because it's happened that since we came out the womb. So I think this has some parts of that. But yeah, going back to VJ and Dad, they are very convinced that, again, you can only see things from your personal view. So I understand, like, we can see it from the inside and we're like, nah, Sway, like, I can't read her mind. I can't any of that. But I can understand from the outside when you see it happen enough where, the guesswork just line up every single time, you start to wonder, like, wait a minute. So I get it, even though I will say to me, it's always hilarious, especially with Dad, because Dad is so convinced, like, you cannot tell him otherwise. So to me, it makes it funny. But yeah, I think that's my take.
Yeah, definitely with him. One thing that you mentioned that I think is worth kind of plugging into a little bit here is our communication, and even, some things that people don't think about, like our nonverbals that you pick up on when we don't know how to say words. I'm laughing. And I laugh because I'm thinking like, oh, maybe that was a little freakish to Dad if you set us in the same crib and we communicated with each other in some sort of way that was nonverbal and we were still able to. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. I'm pretty sure Dad just would sit back and watch us interact with each other, and we were able to have a full-blown interaction without saying words, and it was probably just a little, just different. I've been told, because I don't remember this far back in life, but when we first started to speak, you would not speak. That Marrisa did not speak. She, almost had to go to like speech therapy and stuff because Marrisa would not talk at all. She wouldn't say not one word, but I spoke for Marrisa. And so if she went somewhere and it was like, hey, Marrisa, do you want the hot dogs or the hamburgers? And then I would say, Marrisa wants a hamburger. Do you want ketchup or mustard? She wants ketchup and mustard on her hamburger. And they would get a hamburger with some ketchup and mustard and give it to Marrisa. She would eat it. And you would eat it. That's not funny, but it is. Like, and you would eat it. And they were like, it always worked. It was a foolproof method. Like, if we needed to communicate with Marrisa, talk to Courtney. I'm pretty sure I'm laughing because it's probably freakish for the people who were involved at the time that tried to talk to you, and you looked at me and I start talking to them. Like, that could be a whole horror movie. But like, my mom was like, hey, for the longest time, Marrisa did not speak. And so if we needed to know what Marrisa needed, we looked at you and you spoke for her. And so I don't remember how we were in tune at that point. Like, I don't know if he was winging it. I don't know if I was just, I don't know what was going on then. I'm glad you started speaking, because like, if they asked me now, I just wouldn't know. But clearly there were some strong connection points at that time, for me to be speaking for you, making decisions for you. And all we had to do was look at each other. Like, I'm pretty sure Dad did experience something. And so we might need to, call him up one day and say, hey, Dad, what actually happened that you feel that way? But, it's interesting with our brother because we're 9 years older than him. So I do remember from 9 years until now, but I still feel like he's experienced something that makes him very much so just as convinced, 10 toes down with my father, that we have some sort of telepathic ability. I don't know where that connection point is, but I will say we are definitely connected. And I do think that we are connected more than your average sibling or friend or anything. Because I just think that I would, unless you intentionally tried to throw me off, or I intentionally tried to throw you off, I don't think that we could. Because I think we just know each other so well that it's hard to do that, especially because even on into adulthood, we have been together. The only time we were actually really separated was 4 years that we were in college. And then after that, we were, reunited. And so even though we don't live together, we still see each other often enough. We still talk often enough that it's like there's still that strong bond there. Anyway, any parting thoughts on that, Riss?
No, I don't think I have anything to add. I mean, I think I certainly agree there. I think, coming out of this, I just want to state again, I don't have any conscious memory of like ever fully tapping in like, oh yeah, I exactly know what she's thinking right now or she's going to do or anything like that. But I do think being able to read the nonverbals well enough and carrying up some of the communication we had when we were younger is kind of influencing some of the connection that we have now that goes beyond like what some folks might say is regular.
Well, good. Maybe we'll do a follow-up. Maybe that'll be an interview that we do. Lord help us. Maybe that'll be an interview that we do with our father or a brother or both, bring them both on. Lord, really help us. Bring them both on just to get some of their experiences as to what actually went down, because it's so interesting because they will never actually say what happened. I think for my brother, it's just that me and you have said the exact same words to him, the exact same things to him so many times, and we were in just different areas when we told him, and he's like, okay, listen, the other one has already told me, like, and we just had no idea. So I think he's just been over the years put it together like, yeah, something is happening. They're like, this is not normal. So definitely, if any twins out there, any multiples out there, any parents of twins that have experienced anything, especially those that, maybe have children or kids or young ones or newborns or whatnot that are twins, I'd be really interested in hearing, feedback or about maybe some of the things that you observed in your twins and, maybe how they connect with each other and how maybe they communicate with each other, the nonverbals, in a way that that they're communicating with each other. Definitely, we're looking forward to hearing from you. You can contact us you can email us at twintheorypodcasters@gmail.com, or you can find us on any major podcast streaming at Twin Theory Podcast. And so you can also find us on Instagram on Twin Theory Podcast. And so you can shoot us a DM question or whatever. We're, always open to getting some of your feedback, but definitely interested in this one because, from our point of view, we think that it's normal, but I think that, it's enough. I know enough to be able to say that maybe it's not normal for some folks that are outside that are looking at it. And so it'd be interesting to hear some of you guys' feedback. And again, maybe we'll have to do a follow-up with our brother and our father. So wherever you are in the world, I hope that you are enjoying the season And here in the US and in the DC area, it is getting cooler outside. Definitely. It's a beautiful time. It's in the 70s and 60s, and it's dropping down to the 40s at night. And so it's a beautiful time right about now. So wherever you're at, I hope you're enjoying the seasons, and we have some holidays coming up. So definitely we will be in touch, and we will talk to y'all later.